Okay, it is February 1st at a little after 7 p.m., 7:02 p.m. And this is my promised discussion on the auditor race in Clermont County. And I'm joined by Mr. John Becker. Mr. Gregg Gentile did not respond to request to come on and answer a predefined set of 6 questions. So just by quick background, in the Clermont GOP, it's the holy grail is to get endorsed by the central committee in the primary. And their endorsement meeting was on January 28th. And I did some coverage of that with Dylan Blevins. And John Becker is running for auditor in Clermont County. Gregg Gentile is his opponent. And Gregg Gentile is the preferred choice of the current auditor, Linda Fraley, and people that would be aligned with Linda Fraley. So what happened in the endorsement, if you watch that coverage, is basically it stayed like a tie vote. It was like 52 to 52 through the vote. You needed, I think, 63 or something like that to be endorsed, to be the right percentage.
Sounds right.
You needed 60%. And it kind of stayed tied. And then a few people moved. It was like, I think the last vote was like 54 to like 50 or something like that. Like you were, maybe if that would have been a lot more rounds, you could have gotten to 63. But I can't say what a coup it is, in my view, that Gregg Gentile did not get endorsed and John Becker, and it was such an evenly split thing. And that's just my opinion because of having the strong support of Linda Fraley on Gregg Gentile's side. So Mr. John Becker, who is here, who has been a state rep, a long time you were state central committee, and you're currently a township trustee in Union Township. And I'm going to not even let you talk until I ask the first question. Then I'll let you talk as long as you want. There's no time limit since you're the only one here. I sent the link to Gregg Gentile, so if he shows up, I'll put him on. So everybody, if anybody knows Gregg Gentile, tell him to get on here and answer these questions. They're very straightforward questions. So question number 1, and then you get to say whatever you want, John, as long as you want. Who are you? Why are you running, and what are your qualifications?
Well, Mr. Hicks, I guess what I should probably lead with is it was contrary to wise and sage counsel. I had multiple people tell me I'm out of my mind sitting down doing an interview with you. And my response was that, well, I understand your concerns. I appreciate it. But, I have never turned down an interview with anybody. I've never refused a meeting with anybody. And I've never refused to take somebody's call. And I'm not going to start now. So I'm as ready for you as I'm going to get. So, okay. So your questions.
Well, hold on. I appreciate that.
Go ahead.
And I think that is and I like to say you've never run away from me. Never run away from me. Yeah. And here's a secret for people that I'm not saying John Becker is the wisest man in the universe, but he has the wisdom to know that it's better off to take interviews, and it's better off to answer questions, and probably even better to do it amongst people who are sometimes critical of you, because, hey, that's what's made Donald Trump, hasn't it? He takes interviews that are rough. But go ahead. Who are you? Why are you running? And what are your qualifications?
Well, you've been plenty critical of me over the years, and I know that's never going to end. And it's okay. I'm in politics. I'm a big boy. I can take it. All right. So back to the questions. So, I appreciate the introduction. John Becker, Union Township trustee, former state representative from Clermont County. Who are you? Why are you running?
Why are you running for auditor?
Yeah, why am I running for auditor? Well, I'm a public servant. And, it's a matter of I have a skill set. And that skill set can probably be used better in Batavia in the auditor's office rather than in Union Township picking up highway trash. I don't mind doing, but you don't need an MBA to do that. How about the next one? What are your qualifications?
And what are your qualifications for auditor?
All right. So I got a cheat sheet in front of me if people see me looking down. So it's my resume. Let's see. I have 30 years of business experience. I got we talked about my state government experience, local government experience. I have an MBA with an emphasis in taxation. My undergrad degree, I got that at Northern Kentucky University. That's with a major in business management with a minor in psychology. The You mentioned let's see, 8 years on the state central committee, 33 years on the local central committee. So it's with my background, and one of the letters I sent out 3 letters to the members of the central committee, members of the Clermont County Central Committee prior to the endorsement vote. And on one of them, I outlined some things that I did when I worked for a Provident Bank, where I actually revolutionized a system to balance the books. And it was something that was never.
That's important at a bank.
Yeah, well, it was actually never balanced. I mean, there was just a certain amount of out of balance that was considered acceptable, and trying to balance it was a very laborious process. So you kind of get to a point where that's close enough, and they let it go. Well,
Okay.
I came up with a macro-driven VBA system in Excel where you literally push a button and everything balanced. It was magical. They loved me there. It went real well.
And it rounded all the money into your bank account? No.
No. Unfortunately, Provident Bank got sold to National City Bank, and then PNC bought National City Bank, and that was kind of the end of that. But so most of my background is in finance and banking, and spreadsheets are something I'm good at, and it's stuff I like doing. So I mean, when I was early on, when I was a trustee, my first year, I dug into the numbers in Union Township. I didn't bring the props with me this time, but there was I worked with the fiscal office, and I got the data in terms of where do our property taxes go? How do those taxes get divided up between in the township, between police, fire, the cemetery, the parks, what have you, but also bigger than that. So you got a property tax bill. How much of that is divided up between the school systems? So so I did charts, and the hard part was summarizing the data. Well, I'm sorry, categorizing the data. Once I had it all categorized, after that, it was real easy. It's just a matter of doing a pivot table, and then I drew the graphs off the printed table, pivot table, and did the presentation at the trustees meeting. I did 4 or 5 of those. Those presentations are actually online on the Union Township website.
Well, you on that front of your qualifications, I think you have always, as long as I've known you, you're always interested in fiscal responsibility stuff, number stuff, things like that. So just from separate from qualifications, it's definitely always been an interest area of yours, and that people can understand, or it starts with you understanding, and then people can understand how the money flows and what's involved where. So let's move on to the second question. What would you change about the office versus what would you keep the same? The Clermont County Auditor's office.
Well, to come up with 3, there's probably a lot of things I'd wind up doing once I'm in there, but just kind of for starters, it's a matter of I'd want to audit the auditor's office, and what I mean by that is just a review of policies and procedures. The bigger thing I'm more interested in is the valuations of the high-end commercial properties, because there's anecdotal data that some or many of those properties may be undervalued. So if that's true, and I don't know that it's true, but if that is true, then these tax levies are designed to bring in a certain amount of money, a fixed dollar amount. And I might be oversimplifying how this works, but regardless, that's kind of in principle. And if any property is undervalued for that matter, but especially the high-end commercial properties, we're talking multiple millions of dollars. If those are undervalued, then residents are paying more than their fair share. And something I strive for in a big way is just to be fair. And so it's a matter of what is the fair market value of these properties, and you get different opinions on that and different ways to get to those numbers. And what I'm saying is the whole thing, how it's done, and how these numbers are run, it needs to be looked at. And if it needs to be adjusted, I'll adjust it. If it doesn't need adjusting, then I won't. Then all is well.
Well, I think that on the property tax front, it always struck me that there's 2 things that people are concerned about: is the amplitude of property tax, how much they have to pay, but the general feeling of whether it's fair or not. Like, is it actually being fairly meted out?
Right.
And I think people are always, there's naturally going to be a suspicion of that. And, so I think that's something that's probably a good thing to look at. Linda, I don't want to go off the questions here, but Linda will have been, is it 32 years that she will have been the
I think 33.
Okay, just on that front too, I always think it's just good to have. I mean, we say we're for term limits as conservatives or Republicans typically. It's good to have a fresh set of eyes, basically a fresh set of eyes look at stuff. Just like when you became a trustee in Union Township, you were a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean the eyes before you were bad eyes.
No, not
It's
at
just
all.
a fresh set of eyes. And I don't mean to go off, but I use this example with people is that my wife and I are very happy with our house the way it is. But maybe, John, you come into our house and walk around and you could come up with 3 or 4 projects we should be doing that are probably good ideas that we don't really notice because we're used to it the way it is.
Sure. That
And
makes
so
total
maybe
sense.
that'll be, is there anything else relating to change in the office or keeping the same that you want to highlight?
Well, yeah. So it's got like 3 items I've been kind of running on. The third one is a series of like meet the auditor YouTube videos. So they'd be brief videos, probably not more than 5 minutes. At least I hope it's not any longer than that. And most of them probably closer to about 1 minute or so. Just explaining the concepts that are of interest to the public, or the kind of questions I get the most. So you look
Okay.
at your property tax bill, you see what is this, what is that, what is the other thing. Well, I got in mind doing videos and putting them online, on the auditor's website, explaining these things. So that's the third
Now,
thing.
would you support, like it almost sounds like a little bit of auditor's audit office university type thing. Would
Exactly.
you do all those videos, or would you sometimes have like deputy auditors that are the most knowledgeable do those videos, some of those videos?
Well, that's a good question. My intention was to do them all myself, but if somebody else in the office wants to do some, all, or
Okay.
many, yeah, I'm willing to have that conversation.
Okay. Because there's things like even like people don't realize how many functions the auditor has. There's more, I believe there's more than 100 functions in statute that are responsibility of the auditor. So it's a full gambit of things. And, one of the lesser things, but known as like dog tags, stuff like that come into play as well. So it's I got to think it's one of the most broad and all-encompassing jobs of any of elected officials, maybe short of I think it has more individual different responsibilities than even sheriff or prosecutor. And it just has a lot of different things that umbrella under the auditor.
Well, there's a lot of complex things that occur in the auditor's office, and there's a lot of responsibility there. So it's not something to take lightly.
So the third question is, how do you react to community concerns over property tax rates, and where do you stand on efforts to reform property tax?
So I've watched many videos, I don't know, 2 or 3, I guess. I think it was 3 on the repeal effort for the property taxes. And when I guess it first came out, it's like, oh, I have a question for these guys. What happens what do you expect to have happen when you call 911 if all the property taxes are repealed? So I got looking at their information and what do they have in mind, and it seems like their beef is with the school property taxes much more than it is for police and fire. But
Okay.
regardless, to take the hatchet and completely eliminate all property taxes, okay, I'm willing to entertain that idea. I mean, I'm intrigued by it. The question is, okay, what will the General Assembly do? And what I would like to see happen, and I doubt this is going to happen, but what I'd like to see happen is the General Assembly come up with a plan. And this isn't hard to do. Well, it would be complicated, but it's easy to explain. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
All you have to do is write a bill, and the bill says something to the effect of, in the event that property taxes are constitutionally outlawed, then this series of laws goes into effect.
Okay.
So that would be it. Then of course, what is that series of laws? I mean, obviously, they're going to have to give townships
Right.
more authority, because we have very little authority, and we're a creature of statute. So are we going to be able to do sales tax here, and are we going to be able to do income taxes?
Right.
And there's a lot of options here in Union Township because we're a big township. But what about the smaller townships? What does
Right.
Sterling Township do? What does Wayne Township do? I mean, there's they're going to be, it's going to be much more difficult. And in terms of like raising the sales tax, when I sat on the Ways and Means Committee, I used to, I was on more than one occasion, I would, I guess, paraphrase Tina Fey from Saturday Night Live and say, I can see Kentucky from my house. And the point being is, if you raise the sales tax too high, then the border communities, and in Ohio, there's a lot of border communities. Southwest
Go
Ohio,
elsewhere.
one of them.
Bye.
Border communities will get decimated because all that traffic is going to go over to northern Kentucky to make the purchases, and they're going to be buying other stuff while they're over there as well. So those are concerns with it.
I think on property tax, I think the key beef, I agree with you. School is a big thing, but there's so many things that are funded through property tax, mental health services, senior services, police, fire, libraries, and the feeling of like, is this really the fairest way to fund all these things? And is so any event. Okay. So let's move on to the fourth question. Do you think there are things that could allow reduction in property tax? If so, what?
Sure. So, as I mentioned previously, taking a look at the high-end commercial properties, because that would reduce everybody's property taxes if those properties were to, let's assume for the moment, again, I don't know that this is true, but let's assume for the moment that there's a significant number of them that are undervalued, meaning less than the fair market value. So that being the case, if that's true, then bringing them up to fair market value is going to reduce everybody's taxes. So that's for starters. Secondly, in the auditor's office, you're the CFO of the county. So, you're looking at, much beyond, your four walls of your office. You're looking at all of the county operations. So it's a matter of, so I'll give you an example. I just got my tax bill in the mail and I asked myself, why am I getting a paper tax bill in the mail? So that could be, there's good reason. Maybe it's by statute. I don't know the answer to that. So, but it's that kind of stuff I'd be looking for. Is there a better, smarter way to do that? And something that Ms. Fraley's been good about, or at least my understanding, has been, putting technology into the office and automating things. And I haven't heard AI mentioned, but that's something I would look at too. Is there a role for AI in the auditor's office? And I tell you, that does scare me a little bit, because every now and then I'll ask AI a question and I get a stupid answer back. Or stuff that's like provably wrong. One time I think it was Grok, and I asked a similar question to Gemini. It was, if you're going to give me wrong, if I have to give you the correct information, how am I supposed to trust you when I don't know the correct answer?
Right.
And it came back and said, don't trust me. I'm not trustworthy.
Right. What do you feel, John, about the notion of the efficiency of government operations in offices beyond the auditor's office? Because there can be inefficiency in other places where what are you going to do if you notice a place, certain department or office seems to be inefficient to you as the auditor, and you would have the mind of this could be more efficiently done and reduce the tax burden on people. I know you from the history is when you're a Union Township trustee, you've not been shy about giving presentations and so forth. Can you see yourself giving presentations to the commissioners on ideas on how they can make more efficient government that's lower cost for the people?
Yeah, I can envision doing that. Where I would start with is the elected official whose department I'm interested in, or have an idea for a suggestion, bounce that off of them and see work with them. And then from there, it's a matter of going to the depending on what it is, of course, going to the commissioners then to make some systemic changes.
Okay. So let's move on. The fifth question is,
yes, sir. There was one more thing I wanted to mention. So there was a third item on that previous question. So recently signed into law is a scalpel put in the hands of the Budget Commission. And the Budget Commission consists of three people. It's the auditor, it's the treasurer, and it's the prosecutor.
Right.
Yeah, the Budget Commission. And this scalpel will allow that commission, those three people, to take a look at tax levies and then carve out what appears to be, if it's unreasonable, somehow, we have the opportunity to take a scalpel to some of this stuff. So that's another way we could lower taxes.
Okay. Okay. The fifth question is, the auditor's office has many functions beyond property tax, what functions stand out to you as possibly having room for improvement?
Well, I would say all of them have room for improvement, and
Okay.
this concept called continuous improvement. That coming from the corporate world, I'm certainly familiar with that, and a lot of theories that came and went over the 30 years I was in corporate America. Also, it's a matter of improving and innovating, and doing that on a regular basis. So, I would imagine there's opportunities to get better at what we do, and that's kind of the idea of going in with a fresh set of eyes. Okay, how do we do it now? What if we try this? What if we try that? And
Okay.
consult with the staff and see where it goes from there.
Okay. All right. So that brings us to the last question: is closing comment. What do you want to talk about? What haven't you talked about? You want to talk about? What didn't I ask that you thought I should have asked that you'd like to hit upon, John?
Well, I guess the one thing I'd really want to mention is that my opponent and I, we had coffee at my invitation. We had coffee together. We had a very, very friendly, very nice conversation. And on a gentleman's handshake, we decided we will not go negative, that this is going to be a clean campaign. And that included PACs. So, I'm not opposed to PACs getting involved to help me out, but this is something I'm very serious about. I don't want any PAC going negative on my opponent, on the outgoing auditor or the auditor's office in any way for any reason.
Okay. And how do you feel about it? That's your okay. So that's one thing. I don't know if that was a closing comment, but is there a closing comment you want to make on why should people vote for you for auditor versus the person that Linda Fraley, the current auditor, says they should vote for, which is Gregg Gentile?
Well, I say compare our resumes side by side. I'm the guy with the MBA with an emphasis in taxation. I'm the guy who's a tax accountant. I'm the guy who's got 30 years of business experience in a finance role, a lot of it in finance and banking. And it's my experience at different banks I've worked at and things I put together. I was thinking, it was like Fifth Third Bank. I put together a database on consumer loans database that nobody had ever done before. So I'm always looking for these ways to go above and beyond the call of duty at the office. So, I think I could probably come up with some innovative ideas to bounce off the staff at the auditor's office and, see if we can find some areas to improve.
Okay. Well, I can say one thing. I appreciate you taking the time, and I've probably been I'm both you talk to me, but I'm a pretty good critic at times.
Oh yeah.
Pretty much everybody. Okay. I'm an equal opportunity critic, but I don't think I've ever called you unethical or anything like that,
No.
and so I think that you have a good heart and you have a good heart for public service. You and I oftentimes can disagree on stuff in terms of what's the right policy or what's the right approach, but I don't think anybody could ever accuse you of anything that's kind of untoward, improper, and even here you're saying you don't want the campaign to go negative. You want it to be a positive campaign.
I'm absolutely serious.
And and I will say that you are a known commodity in that you have been around. You have the voters have known you. You have been all these different roles, and so that's what it is. And I would like to encourage that Gregg Gentile to do the same thing that John just did with me. And remember what Dylan Blevins says: Chris is actually not that bad when you actually talk to him. And I just wish that I think Gregg Gentile. I would just encourage him, that he's going to have to talk to people, and he's going to have to talk to people that'll be critical of him and ask him the same kind of questions that I just asked to you. So, John, thank you very much for joining me tonight. And
can I get in one more comment?
Yes, sir.
Just that, you're talking about our relationship. I've told people repeatedly, I said, Mr. Hicks hates me. He just doesn't hate me as much as he hates a lot of other people.
Actually, I don't hate anybody. I don't think I think a lot of times people can be better by being more transparent and changing their mindset. And I think you are a pretty transparent individual, or if you're hiding stuff, you're doing a good job of hiding it, you're, like I said, you'll talk to anybody. You have a good heart. Sometimes you and I disagree, sometimes profoundly on policy views and what should happen,
Oh
or
yeah.
how to approach something, or how hard somebody should bang on something. You know, one of the things I'll say we have a different view on is, you know, you just said don't go, you know, you don't want any PACs or anybody going negative. And
Yes.
I'm the guy that would not have any fear of going negative in something.
I know.
So that's a very different part of our DNA. So, but hey, John, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I wish you the best of luck. I hope that Mr. Gentile will do the same kind of thing with me in the near future. But
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hicks. You have a great evening.
have a good evening.
Take care. Bye-bye.